Oh, hey, Alice. How's it going? Today we got Patrick M. Duggan with us today out of New York. How you doing, man?
Doing all right, man. Yeah, out here in Long Island, New York. Um, what's up, everyone?
Patrick. Oh, hey, Neif's here.
Oh,
Oh, hey, Neif. Good timing. We literally just started.
oh, hey. Well, let me get
Al-
off the phone.
um, Alice, Neif is here as well. I was just about to say, Patrick is a tattoo artist, has his own shop out of New York, and you guys should definitely check out his work if you're into that kind of thing. It's I want to make sure I get this right. Biker, Witch VVITCH underscore tattooer, and he's got some really excellent shit. I've been a really big fan of his for a long time, and I'm really glad you're here with me, man.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. Sorry about all the seemed like we had some scheduling kind of fuck ups and stuff like that over the last few days trying to make this happen, but I'm happy we finally got to connect and make this happen.
Yeah, dude, I'm super stoked. And yeah, no problem. Like shit comes up. I've been busy as hell. So yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's just get into it. Something I ask everyone, and I think it's just a good jumping point, is do you believe in aliens? And let's say, because we're gonna unravel this even further. So let's say let's start with extraterrestrials, like off this planet.
Okay. I think see this is a tough one that's really funny for me because I talk to people who are into the occult and they're actually surprised by my answer. I am skeptical about the idea that there is like green or gray men coming and visiting the earth on a regular basis. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. But do I think that there's life out there? I think if space is truly infinite, then it has to. I also think that things exist interdimensionally beyond kind of what we're able to experience in our very limited physical kind of realities, which gets into my kind of beliefs on kind of type of Gnosticism and whatnot. But I think that we're extremely limited by design by our physical capacity. And it's quite possible that there's things that exist on close related planes of existence that we're not easily able to tap into. But I mean, I before I go to bed a lot of times at night, I'll watch kind of like different space documentaries and that kind of stuff. And, you know, it always seems plausible to me that maybe at another point in time, there was a close planet that might have had water and able to have fish on it or something like that. I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility. Really good first question, man.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because my next thing I was gonna ask you was how do you feel about like interdimensional aliens? And you were a step ahead of me, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so I mean that's perfect. So okay, yeah, I definitely am on the same page with you there. Like I've had so let me just like give you just a little bit of my background a little bit. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness and like I was also homeschooled and so I was like a really sheltered kid. Um, so when I mean I didn't really know much of anything when I was like 18, and that's when I moved out and got my own place. Um, and you know I immediately fell away from all that and started exploring spirituality on my own and just sort of becoming my own person at that point, just resetting. And that was a really experimental time for me. And Christianity left like a really bad taste in my mouth for several years. I was your typical edgy atheist teenager, you know.
Can I
Um,
ask? I assume your parents were probably pretty devout. I mean, I don't think Jehovah's Witness usually half-ass it.
oh no, yeah, they're my family are all extremely devout. Yeah, which is I have an interesting relationship with my family. They are very devout, but I have a good relationship with them, which is very rare for someone in my situation. A lot of kids don't have that kind of relationship with their parents when they leave. My parents are a rare case. They're just really cool. They're actually breaking the rules by talking to me. You're not supposed to talk to.
Yeah, it was strange. There's not a lot of Jehovah Witnesses in my area, but I remember one or two of them that were related. Actually, they were like cousins. They went to my high school, and they were pretty strange people.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. They just like it's conditioning. They're raised a certain way and they're taught that everyone outside of their church is wrong. They refer to it as the world. So people out in the world are worldly. And worldly to normal people seems like a compliment. It's like, oh, very
Yeah.
worldly, sophisticated. But it's like that's literally the same thing they're talking about, but they're saying it's a bad thing. It's like you shouldn't be of this world. You're removed
I
from
mean,
it.
I think that's pretty admirable on some sense, but
Mhm.
I think something can be antithetical to your own kind of interests. Uh,
It's
but
not
I
a
think
very
it,
Christian thing, right? Yeah.
yeah, I think because Christianity is usually seen as being so universalist and
Hmm.
egalitarian, and I
Hmm.
think that's sort of like tribal, very looking out for your own sort of thing is like kind of admirable, and you don't really see that as much in the modern world. So on some level, I think that like that level of insular kind of subculture is very intriguing to me and awesome, and I wish that like more subcultures treated themselves that way. So in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, I do find that admirable, even if I don't personally align with the things that they personally believe, or those things might even be antithetical or an insult to the way that I live my life.
Hmm.
The zealotry and the devotion is and the adherence to that subculture above all is very amicable, because I think you
Yeah.
don't see that enough in the modern world.
There's several things I really appreciate about being brought up that way, and we can get into that too. But what was I saying? Oh, but anyway, when I came out of that, I really, I didn't, I was upset at Christianity and like, you could even say God as a whole. When I came out of that, I was pretty jaded to it, and I was pretty much an atheist. I thought none of it was real, but I got really into the occult, and I was I was I was trying to prove something. I was trying to manifest something that could give me some kind of understanding, if that makes sense. I wanted to see if there was anything out there. And that at that point that's when I really got heavy into the occult and witchcraft, and it was very superficial at first because I didn't know anything about it. Um, but then after a few years, someone, a good friend of mine and Neif's actually, um, introduced me to the concept of chaos magic and gave me a copy of Liber Null and Psychonaut. And then I got into Condensed Chaos by Phil Hines. And I really, so a me actually, I got ahead of myself before those books. Me and the girl I was seeing at the time had bought a Ouija board for shits and giggles. We
Nope.
got what we didn't. I shouldn't speak for her, but I didn't believe in it. I just did it to get it. Let's say why not? But it wasn't your typical. We were at a it was sort of a convention here that comes through every year called Cosmic Connections, and they had a bunch of hippie shit there like crystals, and we bought a board and it was circular. It's not splayed like a it's the whole thing's on a dial. And when I bought it, I didn't know the difference. I later, in studying, found out that that one's called an evoking board, and it's specifically
Yeah.
for opening doors. You could think of the difference. Your regular standing or your regular evoking board is more like a window talking to a thing,
Yep.
uh, whereas in an invoking board, you're letting something into you. Which that was my first experience with a Ouija board. I didn't know the difference,
Mhm.
and I believe the same was true for her. And um, this is a very long story, and I don't want to go on too long, so I'll try and make it shorter. But it started out moving around, and my immediate skeptical mind thought, well, not that I didn't trust her, but maybe she's moving it. Maybe that's the only explanation I can think of. Well, as we're doing this, it starts to say things that are clearly not her. And that's when nowadays I refer to a Ouija board as training wheels because you can channel spirits without a board, but that board gives you that you can kind of bounce off the other person, like, okay, maybe that guy's doing it, until you get into the groove of like, wait, no, I'm talking to a spirit right now.
It's
Yeah.
often considered it's like a tool or a medium. A lot of people call it fetishes.
Yeah,
It's where the term came out of. Yeah. A
it's
lot of
like an
times it is a good training wheels kind of, it's a good way to put it, but it kind of,
yeah, you get what I'm saying.
yeah, it kind of can seem a little down talking to it, but yeah, it's like a fetish.
Right. And
That's always been an interesting term for me. I actually was just discussing the concept of fetishes with a good friend of mine. Her name is Lilith Scorpius, and she's a really interesting person because she's actually a professional dominatrix, and she goes to school for psychology, and then she's also interested in witchcraft and the occult. So obviously, the term fetish for her is a very loaded concept, but she's a magic practitioner as well. So I kind of was discussing with her, and we were talking about the fact that I think that term fetish, because even in a magical context, you're talking about an item that's not normally it's a material object that exists in this material world imbued with a spiritual beyond sort of energy or purpose. And in the same way you see it in a sexualized context, this is a non-sexual object given that sort of like exalted state. So in the same way, I think a Ouija board serves as like a anchor that people can use to spring them between this material world and the next one. And it's a common one that kind of like dissolves those barriers a little bit, where things get a little shaky between what is supernatural, preternatural, and just natural.
and that's what I love about chaos magic is it kind of throws all the theory of it out the window. It's like, no, don't pay attention to how these things work. Just pay attention to what you can do as a magician, as an individual. Use practicality. Like, you have these tools, use them. Don't worry about how they function. That's what I always loved about it. It's very to the point. At least that's the way I use it. That's my worldview on it.
Yeah,
But
it's really interesting to me too that you bring up Libra Null and Psychonaut, and then Condensed Chaos as like your entryway, because like time and time again, I mean, anybody I think who's interested in the occult and gets all the time for people like, where do I start? And those are really common ones. Usually I'll try and get a read on the person that I'm talking to figure out whether or not they'll actually read or sit down and engage with a book. If they will, I'll usually go that route. If they won't, usually I try and send them a link to have you ever seen the Disinfo con talk that Grant Morrison gave on chaos magic?
um oh man, maybe. Was it
Grant
a TED
Morrison's the
Talk?
writer. He's bald.
Yeah. Was it a TED Talk?
No, it was at Disinfo con.
I
It's kind
don't.
of like,
Maybe not.
but he it's really cool because right at the beginning of the video, the first thing he does, he gets on stage, he's like drinking, and he hops up on stage, he just screams at the crowd, looks all wide-eyed, and then he gives this talk. It's fucking solid gold, man. I definitely recommend. It's not going to be anything you haven't heard before, but I mean,
I gotta check it out. Yeah.
if I get somebody I think doesn't have the attention span necessarily to read a book, I'll tell them like, just go watch this 45-minute talk. You'll get what you need to know.
Yeah. To conclude my long story, what I was saying was it started out moving and I was skeptical about it until I was like, okay, well, this is something else. And after that was happening for a while, I felt a tugging on my, let me get in the camera. There's like a tugging on my finger. Like it was like a string was wrapped around it. I was doing this.
Interesting.
And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? And I was just letting it happen because I'm like, well, it's not hurting me. So I was also, I should say, I was tripping acid at the time.
Okay.
And so is she. I should have prefaced this story with that because that's an important point. But in um, I think it was Condensed Chaos. I think Phil Hines talks about gnosis. There are several ways to enter gnosis, and one of those ways is, any kind of altered state, including a psychedelic state, could trigger. That's another cheat code to just really get into gnosis for me. Is like times I've used mushrooms or LSD with rituals. Um, I mean, that's not necessarily everyone's way, but that's just a quick way I've found to do it rather than like.
It's another tool, and I've known several people throughout the years that I think got way too tied up, and it became a crutch at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a real like a real pitfall that you have to acknowledge about that path.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for sure it can have its place.
It's another thing, like almost like training wheels. Like if you just want to crack someone's egg the first time to get them to start believing, it's like that can open up their mind in that way, and then they don't need it anymore. And some people don't need it at all. It's I think like you said, it's a crutch. It's a tool. It can be overused though. You got to be careful with it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, man. I mean, I was pretty late to the party with psychedelics when I did start using them. A lot of my friends around me were using them a lot when we were really, really young. I mean, I kind of grew up in the punk scene, and I had an uncle that I grew up with who was into a lot of punk and thrash metal music and that kind of stuff. So he got me like really up to speed and a lot of that stuff. And by the time I was like 12, 13 years old, I had like the music taste of like, a 16, 17-year-old who was into punk, So the kids that were older than me in high school and stuff like picked up on that pretty quick. Like, this kid likes some pretty good shit. Like, let's start inviting them to our house parties and stuff. So there I was like 12, 13 years old going to these like older crust punk house parties and stuff. And
fuck yeah.
So, and my parents didn't really give a shit where I was, what I was doing, that kind of stuff. So I kind of fell in with that kind of crowd where people were using and experimenting with drugs younger than most people. And I feel like I picked up drinking and stuff pretty early, and that was fine. But my first couple dabblings with like things harder than that kind of put me off of it because I always got sick or I just didn't feel well or had a negative experience. So I was always like, but a lot of my buddies went straight into like, dropping acid, smoking angel dust, doing fucking all kinds of crazy shit. And I remember like being the guy that was just like, you know what, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to drink like 40 fucking Budweisers and you guys basically like do whatever the hell you want. And I remember being like 17 years old and driving around like probably half drunk with my friends who were tripping balls in the back seat and feeling like the responsible one because I was only drunk, But I got into Buddhism and stuff and was doing a lot of like meditation and experimenting with that sort of thing. And then a few years later, when I got into psychedelics and I actually gave them a shot finally, I found that I was getting to a lot of the same states I would find through much longer meditation periods and that sort of stuff. It was really interesting. Like, first time I took, psilocybin, for instance, I remember like kind of taking a mildish dose my first time, but sitting there and being like, I've already been here, and just kind of looking around and being like, yeah, I already kind of have experienced this.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure, man.
Because it's with Rastas and also with Hindus, the idea of smoking ganja is a meditation. And I come from a very hard belief that you don't. I know a lot of I know a lot of different people that do a lot of different things, and most of them have a reason, like, or an excuse. You can say excuse, you can say reason, and I find that much like back to the discussion of fetishes or training wheels or having a use of things, I think that has a lot to do with the I want to say it's more so the intent or the excuse. If you feel you need something for a reason, it becomes a crutch. People ask me why I use cannabis, or people won't ask me why, but people will always have a reason why they use cannabis. Oh, it does this, it does that. And I've told people for years, it doesn't do any of that for me. Or if it does, that's not why. I do it because I enjoy it. It's the only reason I do it. I enjoy what it does to me, and that's it. And that's what I think of meditation is. Why do you meditate? Well, because I enjoy it. You know. So I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, because that's kind of what it is. Some people look at it as a cheat. Some people look at it as an easy way to do that. I
I
just think it's kind of gets back to that fetish thing.
I also think depending on the I'll go through different points where I'm working with a certain deity or like trying to align myself with a certain current. And I think that there's certain actions that you can do and should be encouraged to do to align yourself with that current that you're trying to walk on. So let's say if you are doing a Shiva working and that sort of stuff, smoking weed might be part of your ritual for that. Whereas like another path might have you stone sober for a few months, like it all depends on the kind of working you're doing. Like I had a few years ago, I was doing workings with the Morrigan. I ate tons and tons of sushi. I ate sushi all the damn time. But one of the animals associated with the Morrigan, I mean, she's associated with dogs and horses. That was easy enough to not eat dogs or horses. But eel, she's associated with eel. So like I had to basically go a few months where I wouldn't eat eel.
No eel tempura.
Yeah, I love it. I'm like, dude, I eat eel like once a week. But
I went
doing
through
the workings, I was like, I have to abstain from eating that.
I went through an unagi don phase for a minute, but it's just so rich and so not really good for you that gotta stay away from it.
Okay. So after it was tugging on my finger, it moved up my hand and it started opening and shutting my hand, and then it was like rotating my arm, and the same thing was happening to my partner at the time, and like it was the same thing controlling both of us. And at one point, it took my wand and set it on my arm across from her arm, and it was just doing this with our arms in such a way that it was able to rotate the wand, make it spin on top of our arms. And we tried this later, and we couldn't coordinate it. We couldn't get it to. It would always fall off.
It's fucking odd, man.
Yeah, so that was the first time I ever experienced bodily possession, and we experienced this close to 100 times more after that.
Wow.
And so yeah, the reason I brought this up is I just wanted to kind of give you a baseline of kind of where I'm coming from about. I definitely believe in interdimensional aliens of some kind of life in another plane. But I think, which you were touching on this earlier, it could also be a part of your mind. It could be subconscious. It could be anywhere in between. It could be a combination of both, and it's sort of irrelevant when you get into high magic like that.
I think people have a tendency to be biased and really only look through that kind of like limited scientific lens of kind of observable, objective reality, quote unquote. But yeah, I think if you start looking at things from a different perspective and start thinking that maybe our human perception might be limited, then I think the possibilities obviously open up a great bit.
Are you familiar with any of the quantum physics theories about the split placement, where when it's observed it does one thing, and when it's not observed it does another?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a very limited knowledge, but that whole concept I've absolutely heard.
That I thought. And there's also the tests that were being done with water, like vats of water, and having different shamans and priests, and
the molecules, how they act differently under,
right, and through meditation, and I got a very, very engineer background, so I very much so come from a scientific place, but I have gotten in deep arguments with other engineers and scientists about when you get into what is basically what we're talking about is metaphysics, the physics that we can't actually prove but for some reason, we can't disprove. And I've gotten into deep arguments with them about how that alone right there gives us examples of mind over matter, and really breaks the ground of questioning a lot of stuff. And, I look at it both ways. I get people that come from the other side where they completely dismiss all science, and say, well, that's scientific basis. It's, because all that could just not be real. And I think there's a center and there's a balance, because I think the science eventually, I think the key to all that knowledge is that the science would wrap completely around and end up explaining that all. Everything was magic before science explained it.
But I think magic never rejected science. It was just that our knowledge was limited, as to where I think a lot of modern religions reject science outright. I think,
well, absolutely.
I tell people all the time, like, at least from a pagan perspective, we have a lasting, unbroken pagan tradition that exists on the earth today, and that's Hinduism. If you look at modern day Hindus, they're not denying science. Like they don't have a problem with scientific discovery and that sort of stuff. It's the Abrahamic religions and whatnot that basically have an issue with science when it basically conflicts with, or they crumple like soft toilet paper and basically just, have no spine, which again, going back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, like we were talking about earlier, I think that them having at least a little bit of a backbone, unlike the Catholic Church, that's like, every 10 years they seem to rewrite the book, is a little bit more respectable.
What's this Pope got to say?
And like anyone watching this at home too, like if a Jehovah's Witness knocks on your door, keep in mind, like they're there because they're trying to save your eternal life. And they probably mean that. They're there because they really want to help, and they're trying to help you, and they're not right. They're not they shouldn't
they're not salesmen that are coming to get over on you. They've just been taught that what they're doing is true, and that's
right.
their intent.
They're trying to do something good, and a lot of them are really, really good people, but they're just misguided.
It's a tough place to be, though. Like I find personally that I think everybody is a sacrifice of some sorts. If you read in the Norse, you hear about Odin sacrificing himself to himself. And that action is basically that he is putting himself through pain and suffering and sacrifice for his own self-advancement.
Yes.
Basically to his higher self.
Yes.
I think that a lot of quote unquote right-hand path religions, as opposed to that more left-hand path way of thinking that is more individualistic, you are essentially a mass sacrifice for the deity. I see personally like Jehovah as this entity that is very parasitic and basically needs this self-sacrifice of his followers, their energy, and he feeds off of their kind of like suffering as a sacrifice to his being and his might.
That's very true. Yeah.
When they come knocking on the door, they might be a nice person, but for me personally, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you're sitting there and deciding to submit your will to the will of somebody outside of you. And it's very plain in that sort of in that sort of way in the Bible that you're talking about that, his will is the most high.
Right. Where it gets complicated is some people, there's a lot of pressure on you not to leave because they get it wrapped in your head that this is like your entire world and everyone is going to, especially in the context of someone like myself that was like homeschooled. So literally all of my peers were at my church. I didn't know anyone that wasn't a Jehovah's Witness except one friend, basically. And I had to rebuild my entire life again. And that's really scary. It's kind of like the Amish have a thing called Ramadan, where it's like they send out their young to go. And what's kind of fucked up about it is they don't, they got their clothes on their back, maybe $100, and they're supposed to go make it in the world. And it's like, that's terrifying. So of course they come home.
Oh yeah, they said most of them come back, but that's
why they come back. It's impossible to leave,
Yeah, they're actually encouraged to go party. They're encouraged to go, not just go into the world, but go see the darkness of the world, because
it's really
it helps drive them back home, for one thing.
it's really interesting for me because like I find usually people want to know essentially. I think this is common with a lot of occultists, but also especially people who are on more of the left-hand path where I'm at. They wonder like, what kind of extreme upbringing did you have? Much like yourself, Alex, where you're talking about that you grew up in this kind of culture. And I think there's this kind of urge to keep you within that culture, but then there's also that urge to rebel against it. The
Yes.
odd thing about me is people want to know like, what kind of upbringing did you have? Was I like an extreme Christian or something like that? But actually, I think in a lot of ways, like my family growing up and the people I was surrounded with had such a nihilistic way of living. Basically, nothing had any meaning.
Mm.
I saw tragedy in my life, and basically, these people just, if you asked them, they would say they were Christian, but we never went to church. We never really did like, we did for like Easter and the holidays and that sort of stuff. And I was like, if this is something you actually believed in, this is not the way you would act.
Right.
You would be much more devoted and you would act in accordance with those things. But like, I think I had a lot of like very rough things happen to me, and I kind of got forced out. I ended up homeless at a pretty young age. I really had no family to turn to or anything like that. And it was through turning to magic and witchcraft that I basically created meaning in my life, because I didn't really see a reason to live if the nihilistic reality that I was raised up in, where nothing really has any meaning and there's no greater purpose in life, was worth living at all. I didn't really see a purpose to get up and put your boots on and go to work at 4:30 in the morning every day for absolutely no
Yeah.
reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Just to be a cog.
Yeah,
It's
and like for what, sense pleasures? Because like every adult male that I knew, for the most part, like lived to get drunk on the weekend. That was
Mhm.
the best thing.
Yeah, there's bigger things than that. So okay, yeah. So I was gonna ask you sort of like where you were coming from and what your background is. So now that we come this far, why don't you take me down your journey as a magician? Where where does that start and end here? Like around, where does that start and like get to here?
Well, like I was saying, kind of growing up, I had a grandmother that raised me. My mom was very young when she had me. I had a grandma that really early on kind of raised me, and she actually, she would have told you she was Christian, but she did practice some kind of like folky and Enochian magic kind of stuff with archangels and whatnot. And her best friend was a tarot reader. Used to come by my house and read cards for like some
I would
people
love
in
to.
my family. But my grandma died when I was a teenager, and pretty much the rest of my family fell apart. But like I said, a lot of the males that I knew that growing up all worked like driving tow trucks or working like construction or driving an 18 wheeler or something like that. And most of the women in my family worked in kitchens. And really, I think I was pretty depressed as a teenager, kind of having a bit of an existential crisis early on, kind of thinking that that was going to be my reality. And I had one friend who, his dad was kind of into Asatru. He was also into Satanism on some level. He was interested in a lot of other religions, and then he was also a tattoo artist. And this guy was like pushing 50, and I mean, he was like riding motorcycles. He collected medieval armor. He had cool books around his house. He listened to all the same music as we did. You know, he would like turn us on to new stuff and that sort of thing. And he was one of the only adults that I really knew who seemed kind of happy and was into cool shit and was like older. So I was like, yeah, man, I want to be a fucking artist. I want to be like a tattooer. And yeah, like I said, I kind of got the rug pulled out under me, like right as I was getting out of high school. So I was pretty much homeless, living on the streets, but I managed to take out as many loans as I could and got into art school. I was training dogs and stuff as a job, walking dogs and doing training and stuff for a daycare center out in Brooklyn. And basically moved off the streets, lived in like some slum housing for a while. And then and I was into Zen Buddhism at the time. I was going to the Zendo and doing quite a bit of meditation and stuff. And I didn't really know anything about Western occultism. But I actually used to go to the ISKCON temple as well and listen to the lectures there from the kind of Hindu temple in Brooklyn. And they had some really bitchin' food and stuff and really cool people. But something about the practice of Hinduism as I saw it there didn't really mesh with me. I didn't realize later that it was just kind of that Krishna consciousness sort of blend of Hinduism wasn't really what spoke to me. And then actually, while I was in art school, I had a professor who taught Irish literature. And I was sitting in this Irish literature course, and the professor, I was probably like half sleeping in class, and she was talking about William Butler Yeats. And she was saying about how William Butler Yeats was part of this Theosophical Society. And that essentially that was led by this woman, Helena Blavatsky. And it was this mix of ancient Irish paganism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and ceremonial magic. And I basically sprung up and I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And she was like, I don't really know anything more about it. So I wrote down those names, Helena Blavatsky, that sort of stuff, Theosophy, and I ran off to the library. I quickly found Crowley. I got into Kenneth Grant, got into Eliphas Levi, and all those kind of like, even Carl Jung, that kind of stuff and everything else. And I kind of was off to the races, reading. And I think up until that point, the only Western occult book I had read was probably the Satanic Bible. So, and I enjoyed that stuff. And I think it spoke to the kind of like libertarian in me, because it was presented in that sort of way, but those ideas were there. But then kind of set me down this road of getting into Western occultism, which eventually led me to Asatru, the kind of Nordic magic. And then roundabout, I found, because I was always interested in this darker side, left-hand path stuff, I found that part of Hinduism that actually did speak to me while the Hare Krishna stuff didn't. And now I have more of an understanding, because I think I have a fuller view of what Hinduism encompasses now that I've gotten older. I mean, this is, 10 years on now. But yeah, that's kind of about how I got into everything.
It's funny you should bring that up, because a Krishna friend of mine just gave me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita the other day.
Great book. Is it the Sri Prabhupada
Let me go grab
version?
it. Let me go grab it real quick.
The Bhagavad Gita as it is, I believe it's called.
Yeah, it's I've been trying to. That was one of the few books that I didn't have in my collection, and
yeah, he gave Neif one too.
Oh, right on, dude. Yep, Bhagavad Gita as it is.
It's super neat, man. Yeah. At this point, I don't know what I believe besides, I guess I'm super fucking left hand. So I'm glad you brought that up, because like, I guess I'm pretty like hardcore chaos left hand when it comes to my belief system, where it's like, belief itself is power, and I believe in myself, therefore I am power. That's pretty much as simple as it gets for me. Like, as complicated as it gets for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key components of that kind of left-hand path philosophy, is that self-deification as like that highest good, where I think most right-hand path religions, it's kind of unification through submission to an external power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, let's talk about sigils.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's after, I guess, all my real experience has been with channeling and with sigils, and I've had varying degrees of success with both. And I guess, well, before we get into that, let me get, what are your, what kind of encounters with spirits have you had?
I've had a lot, man. I mean, when I was a kid, I actually was probably fairly psychic. I actually think a lot of people, especially on my mother's side of the family, have been. But I think that's kind of led a lot of people down destructive paths trying to cope with that. But so you could actually find a lot of videos on my YouTube channel and stuff like that where I talk about specific encounters. But I've had a lot of things, even from conscious entities to even things that I have kind of identified as likely spirit recordings, as I usually refer to them as, which is almost like you think of a groove in a vinyl record. You could put on, like, that's not a live band playing. you can put the needle there and it'll kind of play that recording through that woven in groove. And I think sometimes like in our travels throughout the world, you could bump into some place where, you know, for instance, like let's say every time somebody thinks they have poltergeist activity because you know, every night at 2:30 a.m. they hear somebody walk down a hallway. That's likely a spirit recording. That's somebody who did something repeatedly over and over and over again throughout their life, and it left an energy imprint on this kind of dimension or a related dimension. So you're not actually seeing something that's conscious that you can interact with. You're seeing, like, again, just something that's been over and over and over again. Maybe somebody sat at a desk and wrote nonstop letters or something like that. So you might see that person, and that person might even still be alive, but maybe they sat in that one chair for 10 years straight. And, or even, I think sometimes extreme, like I've driven past a bus stop and seen somebody who obviously wasn't there, looked like a ghost of a person. That can happen, I think, sometimes if somebody's experiencing extreme mental stress or an extreme emotion, they can leave an imprint on reality. So, but yeah, I've had my run-ins with things that I definitely know were conscious and could be interacted with, but some of the most interesting, I think, have been those spirit recordings and things that kind of gets stuck in a place, and you have energy that just repeats itself over and over again on a tape loop of sorts.
It's interesting you bring that up, because now you're talking my world of metaphysics and physics, where I put them together. Like you're saying, with a groove of a record, you know, which is exactly what it is, just like a tape, as opposed to a digital recording or a digital re-representation. It is literally an impression of a wave, and everything, including atoms, structure, is a wave. Everything is vibrating. So it boils back to the whole, you know, when people are like the whole hippie idea of it's all frequency. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, they're right. It's everything is a frequency. And I think there's a lot of validity in what you're saying with that, is that, you know, extreme situations, much like Hiroshima, shadows are burned onto the walls. Something that simple, but it's still a wave thing. Light is a wave, you know, same concepts there. I think there's a lot of I think that there's a lot of explanation in what goes on in that. It might not necessarily be the only thing that occurs, but I think that's the line of thinking, you know.
Yeah, and
I'm,
I
I'm
think
about audio wave magic, if you would. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely, and I think people necessarily think it's got to be negative, but I think positive emotions can do the same thing.
Right.
You know, in a lot of ways. I think I forget what it was. Definitely a chaos magician. I remember reading a book where he was talking about tapping into ambient energies within a space, and I think that's a very interesting one, because he was talking about using like the energy in a cafeteria for different types of magic, and basically try to tap into like large communions of people, and basically like food being such a social thing, and kind of putting people in generally a good mood. That sort of thing was like a very powerful wellspring that he would tap into and use for magic of various sorts. And yeah, so I think people have a tendency to think extreme emotions be negative, but I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah, yeah. That's like in the media, you see like anytime you see a possession film, it's always like super overblown in Hollywood, where it's like their head spins completely around and they're flying into the ceiling and shit. Where it's like anytime, 98% of the times that I've channeled something into my body and like let it operate, it's been non-aggressive. Um, I mean, there's a couple times that's like I had a scare, but like I think the important thing when you deal with entities is confidence, because it's like I think it's sort of they're very responsive. So if you are afraid, then you're literally making it stronger. If you make it very clear that like I'm allowing you access to this avatar, but I am in charge, and I will restrict what you're able to do. As long as you set clear rules, I don't think it's too harmful of a thing to do.
It depends on what you're working with. I think in a lot of ways, to a lesser extent, I would argue to the earlier point that even listening to music is a type of like lower possession, a small possession, because you think about how it influences your mood. It can raise you up to, to another kind of state. And I think the things that are going on in that media influence you in a certain way. So that could be kind of seen as like the spirit of that thing coming in contact with you and possessing you to a minor extent.
That's I
But
not to go into that right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. It kind of seemed to ride on what you were talking about. But I will say, though, like in my personal workings, I got really into and still kind of have found it to be, I think, maybe the three types of magic that I found to be the most potent personally. In my day-to-day, I use Norse runes and kind of Austin Osman Spare style chaos magic sigils and that sort of stuff. Like we were talking about earlier, those have been really integral in my daily practice. Then maybe tarot after that. But I think in a ritual magic context, goetic magic, working with kind of demons and that sort of stuff, has been extremely powerful. And in a lot of ways, kind of sometimes gets a little out of hand, out of control, always for good in the long run. But those have seemed pretty violent to me in the cases where I've worked with those. I've done 2 separate invocations kind of formally, meaning that I invited something inward and then basically had to digest it. And those were pretty violent experiences, and my life was completely changed each time, which has me a little bit apprehensive to do future works, because as much as they have been positive in the long run, they were really, really turned my life upside down.
Yeah. That's some serious shit. I've yeah. Okay. One thing I've yet to ever see, yet many claim to have seen it. People I trust, that have no reason to lie, is poltergeist activity, such as like an object levitating. And I've done a lot of spirit work, I've come in contact with many spirits, and it's just one of those things where it's like I can't believe it until I see it, but I would really like to. How do you feel about that? Because I think they exist, but whenever I have had something use my avatar, it is so excited to be in a body. It wants to maintain this connection no matter what, because it's thrilled to be using hands and like interacting with this world. And I think it needs a form to do that.
Well, I think a deity work, like that connection, I don't know if it ever really leaves you. I think once you open some of these gates, they really are very, very hard to close. I think just kind of it's almost like putting on a weighted vest. At first it feels like very heavy and but eventually you kind of get used to it and it becomes just part of your being. You stop kind of thinking about it as like this thing that's foreign to you, that's like waiting on yourself, and you kind of have to rise to the occasion and be able to carry that weight. In another sense, though, like you were talking about with the poltergeist activity, me personally, I've had friends who I trust very much and who are fellow occultists who have seen physical poltergeist activity. I actually was just talking with a friend about this a few days ago, where she witnessed actually shampoo bottles moving across the countertop back and forth. I've experienced ghost activity on several occasions that was very visual, but as far as an actual physical object moving, I haven't experienced that. I've experienced stuff that looked like it was a physical object to then have it disappear. I used to get what they call hypnopompic hallucinations. That's the medical term for it, but it's basically when you wake up and then you see things in front of you.
Okay.
And I can talk and interact with them. It's not like sleep paralysis. People think it's like sleep paralysis, but sleep paralysis, you're usually paralyzed. And
wow. So
this, I could get up and talk. I can interact. I can tell. I would wake up and see something, and I could tell my girlfriend what was going on sitting next to me. For instance, there was one time I woke up, and this is usually the one when I'm trying to describe. I remember there was I woke up and there was a dog barking in my old apartment I used to live in, and this was a basement apartment. And my upstairs neighbor had like a little tiny toy dog. This sounded like a big like Rottweiler. So I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And I look up, and there's like the tiny basement window up in the corner of the wall, and it's shining light on the back wall of my apartment. And I see the dog. It looks like it's standing outside the window and barking at something in the apartment. I look at what it might be barking at, and there is a severed crocodile head floating in the middle of the room, spinning like it was on a record turntable.
Holy shit.
And the ground in the room looked like it was made of water, and it was moving and like with waves and stuff. And my girlfriend at the time woke up next to me, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I'm describing to her the whole scene that's happening. And it's pitch black in the room pretty much, but I'm like, just give it a minute, it'll disappear. And it kind of like dissipated into like smoke around the room, and it was gone. But I've seen stuff like that seemed physical, only for it to kind of dissipate. But actual poltergeist activity, like as far as like, this coffee cup moving across the desk, I haven't really had too much of that.
Yeah, same.
But one thing I have had though, like, so I did some workings with a particular demonic entity at one point a few years ago. And I had been working for several years with only one demonic entity. It was the only kind of pact and invocation I had done up until that point, but I had very, very strong results out of it. And basically it resulted in my career, I had a lot of things fall by the wayside in my life, and a lot of things changed in my life to make room for that career. And at the time, it was a lot of pain. I lost a lot of people, a lot of friends, a girlfriend. But my career kind of blossomed. And if it's one thing I've learned about goetic magic from various people who do it, they say that those spirits like to bring their friends with them. So they'll kind of like start trying to egg you on to work with another one and another one and another one. And sometimes it can take quite a while. In this case, it took me 6 years of working with one entity till another one kind of came knocking. I started working with this entity, and within a few days after that, I actually had a very close friend threaten to kill me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so bizarre. He's never said a negative thing towards me. He basically approached me and told me basically that he thought I was an asshole, and basically that like he thought he needed to like end this all now. And basically he got very violent in my face and threatened to kill me, which made me have to leave a lot of friends behind and kind of like shattered and splintered my friend group. And I had to walk away from a lot of people. And about a year later, though, I had more than doubled my income. I was driving a nice car. I had great things around me, but like it kind of just started this whole like I had a girlfriend get up and leave in the middle of the night out of nowhere, 3 a.m, pack her shit and leave.
Damn.
So like I might
Weird.
not be watching a coffee cup move across a countertop, but I've seen people around me do bizarre shit that is so out of character to remove themselves from my life.
Yeah. I need to get on that goetic shit, man.
It can be pretty violent, man. Like I said, if you've got a girlfriend or your best friend, you better watch out, man. They might just backstab you just to, because, I feel like these entities, they identify like, okay, well, this guy to be fulfilling his true will needs to get this fucking person out of the way. So let me kind of enter this person's body and make them do something that'll make him get him the fuck out of his life.
I should get into goetic magic while I'm still single.
Yeah.
And then stop.
And I don't think it necessarily always has to be that violent. Probably depends on the entity you're working with. And it also depends on your life circumstances. If you're living a pretty peaceful life and you're being conscious about it and like you're really putting in the work and doing the right thing, maybe it's minor changes. But for me, I'm a fucking bonehead, and like I probably wasn't listening to all kinds of shit. So then you invite this kind of powerful entity in, and they're like, all right, man, fuck it, let's get to work,
Yeah. I've definitely had this was definitely the scariest like encounter I've had. me and the same girl I was telling from the first story were doing another invocation, and um, we'd done many at this time, probably like 20 or 30, but this one we got a hold of um, made it very clear he didn't like me and that he wanted to be alone with her. And he was very threatening towards me. And I made it very clear that I was in control of the situation and that I wasn't going to leave. And, um, but she and I discussed it and we decided we were in a very like, we were very scientific about it at the time. We were trying to get as far into it as we could. And every time, like, it would seem like a waste to just end the discussion. So we decided to keep talking to it. And it ended up, I think that was a test of, probably a test of my will. But it, it did like, okay, at a certain point, there was what felt like a steel cable in my hand, um, and it felt so real. I can still remember how it felt. No, it was in my left hand, and but it wasn't there. There wasn't a real cable. It felt like a steel cable, and the other end of it was getting pulled. So I took her hand and I just started following this cable, and it took me around a bend in the garage where we were at, and then it turned into, it became upright, it became a scepter, and I was standing there in front of the wall, and the whole thing just became like geometry. And she said she saw faces, all like a crowd of faces, and she thought we were speaking to a crowd or something. And so that was neat. But there was a time in that event where it took my arm up here on the rafter, and it sort of like was pushing my torso forward, kind of just like testing the limits of my shoulder. And I could stop it at any time, and I was aware of that. I'll consciously do a thing sometimes when I'm in a ritual like that, where I'll make a fist, or I'll wink, or I'll like wiggle my toes or something, just to remind myself that I'm in control.
Yeah.
And I never lost authority of the situation. So when it got to a point where my arm was, it felt like it was uncomfortable for me, I just said, okay, enough is enough, and we ended the ritual. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to me with bodily possession out of all the times I've done it.
Yeah, that's the odd thing too, is I haven't had really anything that ever felt like it was overtly controlling me, but I would start feeling like people around me weren't acting the way that they usually would.
Interesting.
But I will say though that I feel like maybe on a more subtle level, I think a lot of entities they enter your being and they start to influence your consciousness on a subtle level. They lead you to information. They basically start helping you to see the world through a different lens. The entity I was talking about that kind of started possessing people around me earlier is kind of known for his kind of more entrepreneurial bent. He's a little bit more of a business minded, which I mean, me kind of like being in a better financial position a year later and starting to run my own business and learning very quickly about how to do that, I think was very fitting. And that wasn't really in the cards when I started working with this entity. It all happened very fast, you
That's
know?
cool, man.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I mean, exactly. I didn't really know why this entity was reaching out to me, other than the fact that I worked with another entity for a very long time that's known for working with that entity.
I need to get
So,
on higher magic rituals and stuff. Do you have any recommendations for books?
I mean, obviously the Goetia.
Okay.
I have the Crowley version, but then I also have Michael W. Ford's writing on the Goetia over on my bookshelf, which is a really good one. But I mean, if you're on like YouTube and stuff, my friend Astrid Ko, She kind of comes from chaos magic and that sort of stuff, but she's very into goetic magic. She's a really great resource. I actually found her through Orly Stewart, who's kind of part of EA Coetting's kind of gang over there, but she's a very smart and good, fun resource for all kinds of goetic magic. Asenath Mason's a really great one. Bill Duvendak as well. They have their kind of own esoteric order, which I did some of their initiatory rituals, and that stuff's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're interested in that stuff, I would look up those people. They're certainly worth.
I'll go.
Kenneth Grant is obviously where most of that stuff comes from. So.
Okay, cool. I'll definitely. That's a good good list to start with.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something else.
We'll make sure to put some links in.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go back through it and find the leaks and stuff.
Yeah, dude. And if you need anything, like, just let me know, and I could definitely send you links and stuff to where to find certain things.
Okay, cool. I want to see that the chaos magic video you were telling me about at the beginning.
Dude, it's a riot, man. Even if you know everything, I think just the way he presents it is really, really cool and exciting and energetic. You know, it's definitely like, I feel like when I'm feeling down in a rut, and a little bummed out, I'll throw that one on, and it gets me fired up and excited to be like both a magician and an artist. You know, because Grant being like a comics writer, you know, his magic is really tied up with the act of creation. And hearing him so fired up about like, fuck it, let's do magic, let's change the fucking world, let's live how we fucking want. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Wake the fuck up. Like, that energy, I need that sometimes, you know. So I'll go back to that video all the time. It's a good talk.
Like the David Goggins of magic.
Yeah, 100%, man. You know,
that's funny.
Goggins' fucking book, man. I read it like 2 years ago. I really enjoyed that. I think it's great. I think it's something a lot of people need to hear. And it's a bummer. I feel like that's the kind of thing that all the people that need to hear it never will. And the people that probably don't need it that much, you know, it's more just like a cup of coffee in the morning to them, you know?
Yeah.
Gives you that extra little kick in the ass. But, you know, at the end of the day, preaching to the choir.
That's a really good point. It's like, yeah, the people this is like the people that are going to read this are not the people that need to hear it, because the people that need to hear it won't read this.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's why I'm happy to see Goggins constantly putting out like those like minute long like clips of him running and talking shit. I love that. Like, you know, because that actually might reach somebody, but they're probably going to put it off as like, whatever. Because like, I feel like knowing his backstory is part of the magic of like that whole thing.
Yeah. I saw a clip, it was a short little clip, like what you're talking about, of him, like, he's like, it's 98 degrees out here. And he's like, and guy's like, why are you out here? He was like, why am I out here? I'm out here because you're not.
Hell yeah. Yeah, dude, that's the fucking shit right there, man. That's what it's all about. I've been thinking about this concept a lot lately too, where like, you know, kind of like we're engaging in right now. It's really funny because I think, I don't know, I'm so in love with the internet, to be honest with you. And it really sucks because I hear a lot of guys around me and stuff like that who talk shit on it. But I think it's like, it's a tool like anything. It's the way that you use it. And it's really interesting because I think like, I feel pressure all the time to create more and more and more. And I really enjoy doing it. But like every time you set the bar a little bit higher, it's like, you got to start putting out more. You got to start doing more. You got to start like creating more. But I think like, especially something like we're doing right now, where we're doing voice and video and whatnot, like, I think with each level of engagement, especially in this free form context, the funnel gets a little tighter because there's fewer and fewer people who are willing to do this.
Right.
You know, like a lot of people are afraid to get on camera, or afraid to talk publicly, these sorts of things. I think most people have gotten comfortable with posting a photo and writing something below it, or at least posting a photo. That kind of like mass apprehension, kind of embarrassment is gone. So it makes it even harder for you people to get attention based on just posting photos.
We get a lot of that in the meme culture, where people will put up a quote, and it doesn't matter to them who it's really from.
Yep.
so it's almost like you have a fail safe to be like, well, I didn't actually say that. I was just, people don't want to have the conviction behind their words to the 100% anymore.
But there's levels to it, is what
Right.
I'm saying. Like, so basically maybe you start there, then you get to the point where you're writing your own stuff, but you're not putting your face to it. Then maybe you get the balls to put your face to it. Then maybe you start, saying it on audio. Then maybe you branch to video, but it's very controlled and it's very edited. And then maybe you end up jumping to something like this where we're talking, free form. And I think that the funnel gets tighter and tighter the more and more you go. So I think, it's really awesome that like we're able to do this, but in a lot of ways we're kind of blazing a trail here because, a lot of people don't feel comfortable engaging in this sort of way.
Especially about this kind of topic, like the kind of shit we're getting into.
Well, what are your thoughts on the idea that, magicians, as we use the term, are usually some type, it's not so much some type of artist, but they're usually some type of performing artist.
100%. And honestly,
whether or not it's a conscious thing or whether or not it's brought up, because, when I put stuff out, depending on what it is, I'm not consciously telling people that it's magic, but I often refer to myself as a musician rather than a musician, kind of, it's kind of a funny thing, but at the same time, there's a lot of,
it's true.
I'm really being 100% real about that, because I truly believe that frequency and sound
on some Jimi Hendrix, like Santana level shit. Yeah.
And a lot of, and then you look into the world of music and artists and, I know a lot of tattoo artists too, and they're not just these type of people, us type of people are not just factory working type of people. Not that there's not that I've worked in factories, but the mentality of what I'm doing is just a thing to do what I'm doing to make the money to pay the bills, and we've all had to do that. And a lot of us understand that has to be done. But then there's a certain drive that you feel like you have no idea where you would be right now at all if you didn't have your art. And your art is your practice, and that is what your magic is. That is your practice of it, whether or not people want to acknowledge that or not,
Well, dude, it's like I said earlier, I know exactly where I'd be, and I definitely wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd probably be on the other side of the dirt, to be honest with you, because, I think, and I was really fortunate that I think when I was 16, that I kind of decided like, fuck it, I'm going to go for this shit, because life got really hard when I was 18, 19, and I probably could have just quit then, but I had already set my goal. And I was like, nah, I know where I'm going. Where I think if I didn't really make that decision at 16 and then that hardship hit me at 18, 19, I would have been doomed and fucked, man, because I would have had no direction and no reason to fight.
That goes back to what you're saying about, whether or not you agree with a religion or a belief. The ones that actually have a honor or a consistency or some kind of longevity to them, tend to have, you can at least appreciate that part of it rather not, and I think there's a lot to do with that. I think people lose power as they break away from other people. And a lot of that can be said with, you look at a concert, like we were talking about earlier with, you're talking about extreme actions. It's not always a bad thing. And a lot of times it's a great thing. You go to a concert ground and you can feel it. You can feel the show there,
A church is a great example of that too.
Right. Church is the same way, cafeterias, like you said, marketplaces that are not a bad thing, and a lot of that is memory, your memory of a place, it's a good thing. It puts you in a good mind frame. You're emitting positive energy, and I think
that can get tapped into.
Right. Another side of magic, people don't kind of, I don't want to say ignore, but I think they will decipher and make it either this way or that way. They speak of spirits and they don't speak of spirit, living spirit, because the strength of the people around you, especially in a negative way, You know, a mob mentality is one of the most powerful things on the planet. You know, and if
100%.
that's not magic, you know, and if a crazy leader,
Depending on how you look at it.
right, if a crazy leader screaming at a group of people, convincing them to act isn't a magic spell, then I don't know what is, you know?
Hmm.
And the ability to kind of take the weight of shame and responsibility off of the individual and put it on the person standing at either side of you and the mass group is definitely a powerful one as well that's utilized.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure. So, what what like what inspires your art? Like if you like across all of pop culture and like things you've come across in your experience, like what are big inspirations for you?
I mean, honestly, man, I think trying to not sound pretentious on some level or like contrived or anything like that, but really like I think my experiences up until this point in my life, having come through that kind of nihilistic existence and then finding these kind of philosophies and techniques and things like that have made given me a reason to want to build and create something and to cultivate my own discipline and personal power and those sorts of things. I don't see that enough in the world.
Mm.
So, I mean, even though I'm just doing tattoos and I'm just speaking to people and, writing things and doing all that, like, I see that as very powerful and I'm
Yes.
planting
Yeah.
seeds and igniting sparks and hoping that that energy gets put out into the world and can basically amplify. And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow and it's not for everybody, but um, I think I could do my part to kind of like, try and pass that on to the next person. On a much more grassroots level, I mean, I'm actually, it's really funny because my first love was definitely music. So I could definitely relate to you guys and stuff. I think I was really fortunate to have friends that made it as big as I thought was possible early on when I was younger, because I had friends that were a few years older than me that got signed to like Metal Blade Records, and I was always interested in kind of more extreme metal and that sort of stuff. And that's pretty much the highest you can go. I had friends touring the world and stuff when I was still a teenager, and I realized that they couldn't pay their bills playing in a touring metal band. So I
Yeah.
kind of decided that that wasn't the route for me. And I mean, I played in bands and I still love music, but that's probably one of the things that inspires me the most. I still am really into, um, I think I listen to predominantly black metal and maybe like Swedish death metal, that kind of stuff, that very Euro metal. I like
Who
goth music a lot.
who comes to mind?
Like new bands or like, I
Just
mean, Dissection's a huge one for me. Watain, Migla, let's see, Dawn, sure, like Dark Throne, that sort of stuff.
okay.
I'm more into the melodic type of stuff. I mean, At the Gates was huge for me. I grew up in the punk scene, like I said, so I think as much as I listen to metal, I think that punk ethos
You
kind of
got
comes
punk
through.
roots. I got you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I also though like goth music. I'm a big hip hop head. A lot of people don't know that about me, but they come into the shop and they think it's weird that I'm listening to hip hop. And actually, it's really funny because like I've done a lot of artwork for musicians, and I would say 3/4 of it has actually been within the hip hop realm, not in the metal
Okay.
realm.
Yeah, I'm a big. I also like hip hop quite a bit. I listen to a lot of different shit, but I listen
Are
to
you
a
into
range
newer
of
hip hop or older stuff?
yeah. I listen to a lot of like new age trash shit. Like I used to fuck with like Suicide Boys and Ghost Main. That was
Fuck
kind
yeah,
of my intro into it. I
I
still
love
do,
all that kind of stuff.
I still do, but then I got into some of the more obscure ones like Freddie Dread and
Right on.
I guess he's blowing up now.
Yeah,
Um, oh, Flatbush Zombies. I've always loved
right on.
Flatbush Zombies.
Fuck
Underage.
yeah. I saw Denzel Curry, Suicide Boys, Flatbush Zombies, City Morgue, and like a year and a half ago. And they played actually with Trash Talk
Dude,
and
that was this.
Turnstile.
I saw that same tour. It was
Oh, okay. Right
the
on.
I saw him in Atlanta. It was Trash Talk, City Morgue, um, Suicide Boys, Shakewell, Puya.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think that was probably the same tour because it was like a year and a half ago.
It was the Grey Day tour.
Grey Day tour, yes. I was at
Yep.
that same tour. That's funny.
Yeah, it was rad.
Yeah. Oh my god, it was fucking nuts. Yeah, no, I definitely that was like a big thing for me in my like late teens coming out of
That's
being super sheltered.
all you kids in your new age music.
Neif's an old head.
I love all the old stuff too.
Well, actually, what's funny is I always had a saying around in this town. Actually, when I was running the club, I used to say, the punk rockers thought I was a hippie, and the hippies thought I was a metalhead, and the metalheads thought I was a punk rocker, and none of them knew that I knew anything about hip hop. And I'm really, but everybody in town expects me to play blues guitar, but I'm really a jazz musician. But I've produced everything on the whole spectrum of what we talked about. I've produced everything from jazz to hip hop. I mean, I'm actually working with Friday. I'm going to work with a hip hop guy. Today I had a session. We were doing space jazz. I mean, you want to call it. So,
yeah.
It's people ask me what kind of music I play. I tell them good music.
Fuck yeah.
And my favorite band is me. I always play exactly what I would play. I'd say the things that I would say. I mean, the changes are exactly what I would do. I mean, why not?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. My buddy Jack, he owns a recording studio out in Los Angeles. It's called Big Bad, and he actually got to tattoo him inside of the studio while I was out there a few months ago. That was pretty cool. He was listing off some of the artists that have recorded there and stuff. It was kind of a trip to get to tattoo him, like literally on a table in the middle of the recording studio. It's pretty cool.
Nice, man. That's awesome.
Fun times.
Well, shit, guys. We've been all over the world. Is there anything else you guys wanted to get into? We have a lot to get into, but we would go in for like an hour, so I was thinking we'd wrap it up.
Okay. Works for me. Yeah, like I said, I'm rolling with whatever you guys want to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, I think we hit all the bases. I'm definitely down to do this again sometime if you want to.
Yeah, you said you were in Nashville?
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get back down that way, man. I actually really had a good time. It was my first time a few months back in Nashville, and I'm really excited to come back down that way. I was only there for like a long weekend. I basically went down there. I was tattooing a friend of mine from the area. And then I basically bought a pair of cowboy boots and drove all the way back. It's about a 20-hour drive for me each way. So
holy shit.
You know any of the tattoo people down here?
Ty Absurdity Higgins. I actually just did a podcast with him not that long ago, but the audio got corrupted. But I forget the name of the studio he's at, but he goes by Ty Higgins or Ty Absurdity Higgins.
I don't think I know him. I know a lot of the artists. I mean, I ran a club for almost 10 years, so I mean, I know artists that are pretty big now as far as I guess in town. I mean, I saw them starting out coming in with grapefruits, coming into the club, and finding punk rockers that were willing to let them do ink on them, like, yeah, man, sure, so that's great. Yeah. What do you play?
I mean, predominantly guitar. I played bass in a band called Annulment. We were kind of like a 90s style kind of metalcore band. I mean, and metalcore has like, I think people think of like Avenged Sevenfold, I guess, when you say metalcore, but I mean more like early Converge, Catharsis, Dead Guy, that kind of stuff.
I'm if I drank coffee, I'd drink it black, and that's kind of how I like my metal. I don't like putting, it's not that I like black, but I don't like putting prefixes and post, and additives. It's metal. I come from the day it's all fucking metal, man.
There's not a big black metal scene in New York, though, like especially out where I'm at. I remember I was at a party one time and some guys were talking about black metal, and some of my punk friends that are like really into the crust scene and shit, they were like, yo, if you guys want to see the Long Island black metal scene, He just points at me and he's like, "You're looking at him." That's pretty much it.
Right.
Mayhem actually came through to play here maybe 2 years ago, and it was really funny. I showed up at the show, and there was like some guys that were like drunk at the bar and had no idea a band was playing, and then like 2 or 3 people that looked like they came from the Gathering of the Juggalos. Like, it was really fucking bizarre.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And, man, it sucks that your only visit to Nashville was during Corona season. That's
yeah, it's true. I kind of had to be like a thief in the night getting in and out of there too. You know, being from New York, you know, Tennessee's on the no list. So
yeah, well, we're trying to keep Music City alive on the satellite. You know,
dude, you guys are a cool town though, man. Even with everything going, I mean, I could tell it was really cool, and I was bummed I didn't get to stay longer.
The people here are great. You know, what's going on is questionable, but the people here, you know, are good people.
Dude, and I scored a sweet pair of Stetsons for not a lot of money. I'm pretty excited.
Nice.
Well, that's it. You know, you get cheap boots and guitars here, man, all day.
Fuck yeah.
Hopefully next time you come back there's like music and shit's happening.
Yeah, dude, I'll definitely have to meet up with you guys too.
Yeah, either way, come jam, man. I always got it happening, and I got a bass or a guitar for you to pick up.
Yeah.
What's the name of your studio, dude?
Well, my former studio closed several years ago, but I'm pretty much working out of my home.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on, dude.
You know,
so many people going that way.
I refer to it as a satellite. You know.
Oh yeah.
So.
Dude, that's the way recording's going now. It's like you don't need the full studio, really. You know.
I tell people I can track you anywhere, but if you want me to mix you and make it sound right, that's when I need to go in a room, you know. But other than
live drums is really the problem.
I'll track
that's all you need.
You were a little ahead of the curve on it, but I know I have 2 friends that built home studios over last year just because it was easier that way. They didn't have to leave their home or anything.
And I didn't even really build one. I took the gear that I've had from my old ones and, you know, plugged up what I needed to do and, you know, just work on stuff as we can and keep it going. And then, you know, if I need to go out and cut anything somewhere on a certain level, I'll, you know, go rent time somewhere, what have you. Cause a lot of the studios around here closed up, which is a shame. There's some really great ones and there's some really great engineers and some.
And really probably the ones that are still in business are happy to give you the time for a little bit of money. You know?
Right. You know, and I mean, like all of us, if I had more money, you know, I could help them more, but you know, so we're all going stringent and trying to do what we can.
I actually studied audio recording in high school, and I basically just learned enough to know that I don't know shit. But you know, much respect, dude. Though.
Right, it's all right. I'm an electrical engineer. I just studied. I just always recorded music and played it, and then I cut my teeth with real producers. I worked with one of the most known. He's not known, you wouldn't know him, but he's a guy that worked with like Toto, Stevie Nicks, you know, people like that. And a lot of work on analog stuff like that with him. So I learned more about producing because I kind of already knew about engineering. It was signal flow, you know, so.
Yeah.
Fun times. So yeah, get down here and see us, man. It'd be good to meet you face to face.
Definitely will have to.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that whenever you can make it down. I definitely love to buy a beer sometime. And if you don't mind doing some work when you come down, I'd love to get some ink.
I'll definitely have my shit with me, man. So that's no worries.
Fuck yeah, man. I will. I got some ideas. We don't have to get into it right now, but we can start talking about that too.
Talk to me about it, man. Give me an excuse to get my ass back down there.
Fuck yeah, dude. I'm thinking about. You ever play the game Nier?
No.
PlayStation 3. I'll go ahead. Let me pull this up real quick. I'll give you an idea of what I might be looking at. This might be like a longer piece that I need like multiple sessions on. So it might not be something that's just like a quick get it done in a weekend or kind of thing.
You'd be surprised what I could do.
Okay.
I'm pretty quick.
Let's see here.
many people are pretty blown away that I still have no ink. As many
Really?
tattoo artists as I know, and it's not necessarily anything that I was ever against or for. You know, back in my drinking days, I had 1,000 ideas, and fortunately, I never went through with them. You know, because I'd have God knows what on me now. But you know, it was just one of those things that by the time I got around to even having the time, you know, I mean, because I had tattoo artist buddies of mine that would have just done it. You know, it wasn't even really a money thing at a certain point, but it become almost necessarily passe. I was almost like the freaks that we knew, the very few people that used to have a sleeve. You know, that was a rare thing. Somebody, oh my God, that dude's got a sleeve. Wow. You know, for to be somebody that absolutely has no ink, you know, and it's not necessarily I'm not getting it to not get it. It's just kind of one of those things that by the time it happened, I was like, well, I don't even know what I would get because it's just everything's so passe now. You know, it's like half my cool ideas from back then, like 12 punk rockers, I've already done it, you know. So
I got some pretty interesting ones.
I'm
Can you get
sure.
can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so this isn't the best example. I can't really find exactly. No, that's not good. This girl's got it on her hand.
Oh,
It's kind of,
cool.
it's yeah, not exactly like this, but just the idea, get the concept. You could be a lot more like a lot more creative control with it. However, it would work best.
Dude, I love doing abstract stuff like that. That could be really cool.
Okay,
Sure.
awesome,
On some red.
awesome. That'd be sick. Okay, cool, man.
Yeah, I've always felt like though you got to get outside the box a little bit now, you know, because a lot of people have a lot of the bases covered. You know, you don't want to have something that everybody else
Mhm.
has. You know, to
Yeah.
what?
I also like I'm really into sigils, so I like tattoos that have a purpose. Like
Absolutely.
I've been really thinking about getting a sigil tattoo that just reminds me to be present and be in the moment. Just something I can look down at my hand or my arm, and it's like, hey, be here in the moment. Don't be drifting off. Something
I'm
simple,
covered
you
in
know.
them, man. I got tons of sigils all over me and stuff from various points of my life and for various purposes.
Mhm.
You know, it's and actually every Friday the 13th at my studio we do a sigil event where I do nothing but custom sigils. I have
Ooh.
clients walk in and I sit there with Sharpie markers, and then basically I'm like, "What's your intention?" And then I do like a little ritual and basically draw right on the skin and do it right then and there. You know, I'll have people that come in, they're like, you know, crazy shit. Some of them are like, you know, hey man, I want to make more money, and other people are like, hey man, like I have a history of self harm and I want to like get something to like protect myself from myself. You know,
Yeah, that's
so it can get
awesome.
pretty intense. It's always really cool, man. And I mean, I'll sometimes if it feels right, I'll end up doing a huge piece. You know, and I can usually bang them out pretty quick, but I'll do a lot and I still only charge $13 for it. You know.
Man, that's
Uh,
that's such a cool thing.
we'll definitely have to film it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God, we could do another podcast. You could give me a
That'd be great.
tattoo.
That'd be awesome.
that'd
That'd
be
be
fucking
fucking
rad.
sick.
I'd love
I
that.
changed. I changed my mind. I just want you to do that. I want you to. You already know what kind of sigil I want, so you just design a sigil for me, and that's what I want.
Perfect, man. I'd love to. That sounds awesome.
That's so fucking exciting. Okay. Well, I will let you gentlemen get to bed. Um, Alice, thanks for joining us all.
Seeing you again, Alice. Good meeting you, my man. We definitely gonna have
Absolutely.
to get in touch and talk some more.
Stay in
And
touch.
Yeah.
yeah, and links below to Patrick's tattoo page. Definitely check that out. He has a lot of really excellent
Definitely.
work on there.
Yeah, I got a link tree as well. If you go to my Instagram account, or I'll even send it to you guys. I'm like just about
Okay.
everywhere on the internet you could fucking think of. So
Okay. I'll put that down instead if you'll shoot that to me, or I can find it real quick.
fuck yeah.
Cool, man. Hey, it's been great talking to you. Have a good night.
Be well, everybody.